The people doing the pushing had once been pushed out themselves, and I could not stop asking how that happens. It sent me back to the first story I was ever handed as a young researcher at the BBC's African Caribbean unit, the Sharpeville massacre. The files, the photographs, the record of one afternoon in 1960 when a white minority government shot 69 people dead for refusing to carry its passes, a good many of them shot in the back. I did not imagine I would end up watching the same demand return. Let me show you how I came back to it. I did a thing. 30 years later, in 2024, I decided to return to the homeland. Not to report on the continent, but to come home to it.
I am your worship.
South Africa took me in. For 13 months I lived there, welcomed and held. That is where the story has to begin, with how completely I was made welcome, because I am now watching that same country tell others to get out, and I needed to understand why.
From 1994, when we took over South Africa as a new constitutional democracy, we negotiated more successfully a political solution. The idea being that probably after a decade, when we have the experiences, when we have engineers, when we have investment bankers, etc., people who are technocrats in the political economy of South Africa, then we would go back to the drawing board and say, no, we need to revise the economic configuration of South Africa. So that's why you find a greater disparity in wealth distribution between Black South Africans and white South Africans. Those were architects of murderous apartheid. They're still the beneficiaries today. And that issue is not being attended to.
On the 30th of June this year, a deadline came due. Not a government deadline, one set by two movements, Operation Dudula and March, ordering undocumented foreigners to leave the country or face what came after. By the end of the month, around 25,000 people had gone. The violence around the protests had already cost 4 lives. Nigeria, Ghana, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Malawi. Neighbouring states began flying their own citizens out, an evacuation from a country at peace.
The locals in Melmoth visited the saloon to demand that the lady, originally she is from the DRC Congo, they demanded that she leaves the business because the citizens of the country, South Africa, will take over. Then she said, are you not chasing the illegal immigrants? They said, no, any foreigner must leave the country. Then she said, can you reimburse me with 100,000 rands for this business? So those locals, they just said, no, this thing's worth 10,000. She said, no, the sacrifices, the years in the business, the customers that I have, the branding and all that. Then she said, okay, let me just sort out some things inside here. Then I will hand over the business. She locked the door. She started destroying. Better lose everything than giving this business to someone who has not worked for. And that's when the world started now looking at South Africa.
The movement now leading these marches drew its first real crowds in Soweto on the 16th of June. In 1976, on the 16th of June, the children of these streets walked out of their classrooms to refuse a language the state was forcing on them. The police answered with live rounds. Same streets, same date, the anniversary. Opposite instruction.
Mozambicans, they feel betrayed. Mozambicans is one of the countries that had so many exiles from South Africa. So many of them, including the former president, Jacob Zuma, was here operating underground, carrying bombs, carrying guns without documents in our country while attacking the apartheid government.
One generation shot for refusing to be pushed out, the next marching to push someone else out. An easy thing to do with that is to call it hypocrisy and feel clever about it. I'm not going to do that because it explains nothing. It just lets us feel superior to people we haven't bothered to understand. Why did you say yes when you wanted to say no? Why did you lower your price before anyone negotiated? Why are you still putting off the thing that you say matters most? Most people dismiss those moments. I see clues. I spent more than a decade as an investigative journalist, and I didn't stop being one. I just changed my beat. Signal is built to decolonise your decisions. Follow the reaction, find the clue, change the choice. Try Signal for free. Detect the signal before it makes your next decision for you. Let me give the grievance its full weight because it is real, and pretending it isn't is its own kind of dishonesty. South Africa is one of the most unequal countries on earth. Unemployment sits near a third of the working population. Clinics run short of medicine. Classrooms overflow. Housing with no water or electricity. For 30 years, people were promised that freedom would deliver a decent life, and for millions, it has not arrived. The anger is not invented, it is earned. Anyone who tells you these communities have no reason to be furious is not paying attention.
That we do have illegal immigrants, but it's not for vigilantism to take sway in South Africa. It's for the organs in South Africa to exercise their constitutional rights, the police and the Home Affairs, not vigilantism, ordinary people to start scapegoating other African people. Even if you chase away all illegal immigrants in South Africa, it will not solve the fundamental issue of the economy of South Africa, that under the control of Euro-American corporations and government. And I would argue very confidently that they are the very same people who are fanning this xenophobia, Afrophobia, because they're actually creating a black-on-black violence, which also happened within apartheid when that was happening.
The pressure is real. So the whole investigation comes down to one question. Why does it point sideways at the person next to you instead of up at the person above you? When I can't work something out, I go back to the words people use. Language always tells. The movement's name is a verb, dudula. In isiZulu, to push out by force, not to manage, not to process, to push. And listen to what the pushing asks for. Papers. Remember where we started? The 69 who died at Sharpeville died protesting a law about papers. The passbook. Papers on demand enforced by the state was the machinery of apartheid itself. The one thing this country swore it would never build again. And here it is, a citizens' movement on the street demanding papers. Last November, a court had to formally order the movement to stop demanding identity documents from members of the public, stop blocking people from clinics, stop the hate speech. Listen carefully to that. A court had to step in because the demand for papers did not reliably stop at foreigners. It caught South Africans too. Anyone in the wrong queue who couldn't produce a document fast enough. A demand for papers does not check who you are before it turns. Sooner or later, it turns on you. Here's what I think is actually happening, and it's not about South Africa specifically, it's about all of us. When the power that harmed you is out of reach, you get handed a smaller enemy you can actually reach. And taking that offer feels like strength. It feels like finally doing something after years of being done to. But look at who you're handed. Never the minister, never the bank, never the people who built the system and still own it. Always someone with less power than you, someone easier to push. The people enforcing that deadline believe they are resisting. They are not. They're doing the state sorting for it, unpaid, at personal risk, on the anniversary of their own liberation. The system that failed them handed them a target, and pushing that target feels like power. It is the opposite of power. It is obedience dressed up as defiance.
In South Africa, on the 4th of November, we're having our local government elections, and they are scapegoating Malawians, they are scapegoating Zimbabweans, they are scapegoating Nigerians to say this is where the problem is. And this just goes to show how slavery, colonialism, and neocolonialism has handicapped the mindset of some African peoples, whereby they project through self-hate. They are very easy to manipulate and to be used as cannon fodder for other people's political ends.
If that is a real pattern, it can't only be true in Johannesburg. It has to show up where there are no marches and no borders. So test it. The last person hired who becomes the fiercest defender of the seniority rules that nearly kept them out. The immigrant parent who is hardest on the newer immigrants. The scholarship kid who ends up policing the dress code that once shamed them. The woman who finally gets a seat at the table and guards the door more jealously than anyone born inside the room. Same move every time. The oppressed defending the rules most fiercely, because that defense is the only place the system will actually give you. Being just inside, even at the edge, feels so much better than being out. The excluded rarely tear down the gate. They apply to guard it. I was made welcome in South Africa. Let me be honest about one version of that welcome. It was warm. It was also bought. The women giving it to me were likely paid in coins to give it. Those women sit far closer to the people being pushed out this week than they do to me. Hold on to that. It matters in a moment. Because warmth in that country is real. I lived inside it for 13 months, and the same country, the same warmth bestowed on some and withheld from others, is now telling those others to get out. An hour from where that deadline was enforced is the cradle of humankind. Some of the oldest evidence we have of where every human being alive began. Stand in that landscape and the word foreigner stops meaning much. But the idea of the foreigner was built in this country deliberately, and it is worth being exact about who built it. Not the nurse from Harare, not the trader from Malawi, a minority who arrived not to belong, but to own, and who wrote an entire legal machine for sorting people by paper and by skin. That machine is what Sharpeville died refusing. It did not die with apartheid. The land, the capital, the ownership mostly stayed where the machine had put them. So when a man with almost nothing is told his enemy is the migrant beside him, look hard at what that story protects. It aims his anger down at someone with even less and away from the architecture still standing above them both, still held, still for him, out of reach. That is the oldest move the powerful ever ran. Hand the excluded each other and keep the gate. Some stories don't let you go. So before you decide who this film was about, one question. Whose gate are you guarding? And who told you it was yours to guard? Thank you for watching. Please like, share and comment. See you next time.